We asked 3 billionaires how to get rich, and none of them said work harder, save more, or start a side hustle. What they told us instead completely changed how we're scaling from $400 million to $10 billion in assets. And by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to copy, even if you're starting from zero. Before you think this is theory, here's why we get to have these conversations.
I'm Palmy.
And I'm Nancy. Together we make the
Kitti Sisters. We built a $400 million multifamily real estate portfolio, raised over $130 million from investors, exited $45 million, and sat in rooms with billionaires rewriting rules of wealth in real time. And what they're doing looks nothing like what most people are taught.
So here's the thing. If you stay until the end, you'll see how billionaires actually think. And let's just say the last one, that one stay with us. So let's start with the first one, Palm. You asked him how to get rich. What did he say?
He said 3 words: keep buying assets.
That's it?
That's pretty much it. That was the whole answer. And it sounds simple, but it's everything. At the billionaire level, we're not talking about people who are trying to get that lifestyle, trying to get the bag. They're thinking about sustainable generational legacy. So they're looking for assets that builds perpetual cash flow, assets that can be passed down generations to generations.
So it's just a loop. But people hear that and think, cool, that is for billionaires.
Yeah, that's a total lie. And it's a loop, but it's not the kind of loop you're thinking of. It's not a loop this way. It's an infinite upward spiraling loop, like a screw. And here's the wild part. You don't need to be rich to own assets. You just need to have access to those. And the difference between owing and owning assets, those are 2 completely different things. And I think once you understand that you have to own assets, that's when you have the mindset of wealth. So when I say you don't need to be rich, you don't have to be a billionaire. That's why billionaires themselves loves fractional ownership, or what we call syndication. You get exposed to institutional quality assets with lower capital. And we're talking about, yes, you need money, but we're not talking about millions of dollars. We're talking about 50, 100K, 200K. And if you don't have that money right now to invest, what I'm telling you, you create the income first. That's the first part of the loop. Then you get into excess income equals buying a whole bunch of assets. That's the game we're playing here. That's all we're doing. That's why it's simple. So by doing fractional investing, it reduces the capital intensity of your investments. It lowers the risk because you're now working with experienced operators running the deals.
So what separates good operators from bad ones?
Yeah, this is a loaded question, and we've learned from our fair share of good and bad operators. We've seen them through our LP investment, our limited partnership investments, and even us buying deals from some operators as well. So we definitely have our fair share of experience and definitely have a lot to say about this topic. It goes without saying, number one is they have to understand the market. They have to be experienced. I know there's a lot of new people coming to the space, and my recommendation is, even as a general partner, don't form a team with all newbies because you don't know what you don't know. And there's gonna be a lot of things that happens during the hold. Like we mentioned before, there's 2 types of wins when you do investments. The winning the deal, that's the first step. But the real win is exiting the property, selling the property successfully with a profitable exit. And a lot of people skip that second part. And so when you have new operators working together, there are things that they're not gonna know how to do. There are things that they're gonna look over, things that happen on the property that they don't know how to fix. When we first started investing in multifamily as limited partners, one of the things that we said, and no offense to new people, if you're a fully new team, you're not getting $1 from us. And that's because of exactly what we said. And think about it, in your business, if you're in the construction business and some random dude comes down the street and say like, hey, I see you're framing, can I do your roof? It looks awesome, let me just do it. And like, okay, cool, do you have experience? And like, no, I just think you need a roof. Like,
I just need to YouTube it.
I want to start being a roofer. Like, you're not gonna hire them, right? But if that person came with experience and actual skill sets, then that makes sense. So if you're a new investor wanting to get into the multifamily space, what I recommend and what we did was partner up with people who have more experience. Let them be your teacher. Let them be your Yoda so that you can actually learn how to do this the correct way. As I explained to my doctor friend recently, that you don't just jump to learning from medical textbook to actually operating on someone. You go through steps. You become an intern, you become a resident. There's all these steps. That's why you can't skip over any of those. And that's one of the hallmark of a good operator. So that goes without saying. The next one is they have to be flexible and agile to the market conditions. When we look at 2026 market environment, we know there's going to be different changes, and it's not going to be the same playbook that we use in 23, 24, or even 25. How we buy properties have changed. How long we're holding the properties have changed. And those things, if you don't have the flexibility, you're going to end up running into deals that you win because you won the deal, right? You bought the deal, but you're not going to win when you're operating it and have issues along those lines.
Yes, and some operators, they're too aggressive with their numbers. They're too optimistic about their income, right?
Yeah, and I would even say like when you don't know what you don't know, and this is where we were talking about yesterday, like AI is awesome, but AI doesn't know property nuances because we live in a world where human exists and humans are irrational creatures. So while AI expects predictable behavior, that's not the case with our tenants. That's not the case with the market conditions. So you need people, you need operators who actually are on the ground, who actually can read and see what's happening. One of the great books that we've read about Steve Jobs is called The Innovation Secrets of Steve Jobs. And what that book taught us is that the people who can read patterns before it happens or connect the dot from different businesses are the ones who are going to win. And if you're an operator who are, again, running the old playbook and you're not adapting to what's happening in the environment, you're going to lose. And so that heavily reliant on, hey, AI is going to do my underwriting for me. AI is going to tell me if this is a good deal or a bad deal. I think that's a mistake. I think that you have to have that nuance. It's like people in sports right now. There's a lot of people who rely strictly on analytics, but analytics can't measure your heartbeat. Analytics can't measure how much pressure that person's under in a specific scenario, game 7 of an NBA final, and that free throw is on the line. The analytics doesn't know LeBron James' heartbeat, doesn't know if he's going to be the person, doesn't know that inflection, that muscle, and all that stuff, right? So relying exclusively on AI to make predictable purchases, I think is still ways off, and it's a mistake right now. So the flexibility is really key. You have to understand the intersection of real estate, technology, and commerce. If you're playing real estate the same old way that people have been playing it for the last 20 years, you won't get growth or yield in today's market. Another thing that really addresses who would be a good operator is communication. Market corrections will happen. Market goes up, markets goes down. There will always be challenges. The hallmark of a great operator is someone who can communicate, articulate, this is what's happening, and this is how we're going to solve for it. And along the way, report negative or positive feedback so that you know you're on top of it. I always implore to LPs, while we tell you that it's a passive investment, you shouldn't be set it and forget it. Check in on the newsletters. There's been some LPs who don't read any of our newsletters and are surprised of what we're doing on the property.
And LP is limited partners.
Yeah, so passive investors or LPs who are in the deal, yes, you aren't operating the property. You don't have to deal with the day-to-day management. You don't have to deal with insurance premium increases, litigating property tax, that's fun
our
jazz.
problem.
All those fun jazz. But keep on top of the newsletters, read the financials, ask us poignant questions along the way. I think it'll help you become a more informed investor for our projects or any other future projects as well.
So this billionaire, he also talked a lot about returns. What stood out to you?
Yeah, most people are taught that wealth is all about time. Start when you're a baby, put in 25 cents and keep putting 25 cents every month or something, and then voila, you're 50 and you have $1 million. What those people who taught you to focus on time, what they fail to tell you is that compounding actually going alongside or beating inflation. Because if it's not, that $1 million in 40 years, if you have a baby born in 2026 and you tell them, hey, in 40 years, if you put $5, whatever, you're gonna have $1 million. By the time they're 60, they're gonna have $1 million. Guess what? That $1 million won't probably buy them a bag of diapers that they'll need as an adult.
It won't be the same $1 million.
It's not the same. And so if you focus solely on time, not only are you losing out on because of the valuation of the currency, underlying currency will drop, but you're also losing out on time. What I mean by that is time to actually live your life. If you're living life for when you're retiring, so you're shooting goal of something that's out 60, 40, 50 years in the future, you don't get to enjoy life today. And so when you focus on time, that's the thing that hurts you. When the formula, Albert Einstein said that compound interest is the 8th wonder of the world, and it truly is. But most people are, again, focusing on the timepiece. What they should be focusing on is the yield, is the return, the ROI. What I mean by this is a lot of times we're looking at, hey, put in money in the CD and you get a 3% return. Everyone's happy about that. Is it really combating inflation? Is it below what inflation is? Now, everyone may say, hey, inflation's at 3%. I think it's higher. People put in and pull out of components that would actually increases inflation. Like there's things that are more than 3%. Anyway, that's for a different discussion. What's in the CPI isn't necessarily all of things that actually measures what inflation is. But if you focus on the yield, you have a totally different result. And we've spoken about the rule of 72 before. For those of you who don't know, the rule of 72 basically calculates how fast your money will double at a given rate. And you do this by going 72. For instance, if it's a 3% yield. So if you take 72 divided by 3% yield, that's 3 from 3%, 72 divided by 3, you get 24 years. That means that it will take your money to double in 24 years if you're only getting 3% yield per year. Now, if you flip that and you ask yourself, are there ways for you to get actually higher yields? Let's say 24%. So 72 divided by 24. Guess what happens? Do the math. I know you guys can pull out your calculator right now and do the math. How much is the total? 3 years. Yes. 3 years for your money to double.
A lot of people may think, oh my God, this is fake news. There's no ways you're getting 24%. But if you ask the right people, how much are they making? Are they getting the 24%? The answer would be, there's plenty of people who's getting that 24%.
But the key is, of course, there's tons of deals that can have 24% yield, or supposedly. The key here is to find the one that has the best risk-adjusted return, which means that it has the lowest downside, but the highest upside. Basically, just setting the odds in your favor. So you can compare that to if you invest in crypto that has extreme volatility that can go up and down like a yo-yo, or you buy something like real estate that has a more sustainable, stable, predictable path. And that comes with properties that have income producing assets, not your primary home. We don't think that your primary home is going to be the thing that builds your wealth. If you want to build wealth, you have to buy income producing assets.
Okay, so he also said something crazy about real estate being a miracle product. Why?
So miracle product isn't like one of those things that's like, hey, cure everything, right? Like Epsom salt. Oh, my back hurts. Epsom salt. Like, don't drink Epsom salt, but you get my point. So the reason why real estate, especially income producing real estate, is so phenomenal is because of this thing. So imagine this scenario. We buy a multifamily property, we rent it out 95% occupancy, and it's cash flowing. And we have investors, right? So therefore, first we're paying the mortgage because we're borrowing money. The capital stack typically when we do these deals are lender. Then we raise money from private individuals, what we call other people's millions. And then we have our tenants paying the mortgage, and any excess cash flow goes to our investors through cash flow distributions. So the cool part is, okay, first step is it's already cash flowing. So they're getting their distributions. Amazing. But it gets better with real estate. With real estate, what you can do is go back to the same bank or a different bank a couple years later and say, hey, the property's value has already gone up because of, number one, inflation deflating the value of the currency, increasing the value. Number two is the tenants actually helping paying down your mortgage. But number three is also that because it's actually producing additional income, it's making the property more valuable. So that's, we not only have organic, but we have also forced appreciation on the property, both simultaneously increasing the value of the property. With that said, you can go back to that bank or lender or a different lender a couple years later and say, hey, my property's value is actually increased. Would you mind just giving me a few extra bucks from that? Maybe 20, 30% of the value of the property now can be extracted. And guess what? A lot of these lenders will say yes because they love real estate so much. They'll say yes to the point where most of these loans doesn't even come with personal guarantees. It's non-recourse debt because the property is the collateral. So what happens next? Okay, you go into the bank. I'm making this up. So $100 million multifamily, and yes, big numbers. And we want you guys to be used to big numbers because we buy big things and we think that's the fastest way to make money. No use to going by a couple properties like a quadplex or triplex when you can actually use the fractional ownership to invest in or buy larger properties. So get used to large numbers. Okay, so in my example, $100 million valued property, right? And the bank says, yeah, I see your balance sheet. I see the income it's producing. And I believe that you can extract through refinancing $30 million. Okay, amazing. $30 million is about 30% of the property, right? So therefore, what happens is once you extract that money, you actually can redistribute some of that money to your investors in forms of distribution to them, which is they're gonna love because all of a sudden they got this huge cash injection. The other thing that's really amazing, and I think like if you compare real estate to the stock market, no other market can do this. So if you took a margin call on a stock, you have to be responsible for that stock, right? Like either you're paying the interest on it or you're just replacing it. It's your money. You have to put it in. But the phenomenon that happens with real estate is that your tenant pays your mortgage.
That's so beautiful.
So therefore, you're getting 30%, you're extracting value, but you're not the one who has to pay back that mortgage. And guess what? The beautiful thing is it repeats itself. This isn't a one-shot thing. And that's why we love buying newer assets because we get to repeatedly refinance, extract cash, and do this over and over again. And that's why we talk to you about the loop, but it's a spiral up loop because the value of the property keeps increasing from 100 million. The next time around, it may be worth 150 million and maybe 200 million.
And so we do the same thing.
So we extract value. And the best part is it's tax-free. So you're getting 30% extraction out of this property. You're not paying tax on it because it's considered debt by the IRS, but at the same time, it's a debt that you're not paying. Your tenants are happily paying it because they're living in awesome properties. That's why we think real estate is really a magical money tree.
It's a magical product.
It's a product that's why billionaires always own real estate. That's always part of their portfolio because it's one of those reliable, predictable things that just can extract value after value, dollar after dollar for generations to come.
It's a magical money tree if you know how to use it.
That's right.
Okay, let's switch gear. You also asked the second billionaire how to get rich. What did he say?
He said, don't chase headlines, invest in the ecosystem.
And he used AI as an example, right?
Yeah, so he quoted Jensen Huang, who is the founder of NVIDIA, talking about the 5-layer of the AI cake. So the foundational layer isn't software, it's actually energy.
Why energy?
So energy is the most critical layer. Whoever controls energy really controls the future. It's almost like nuclear weapons in the Cold War era. And human beings are continually consuming more and more energy. This isn't just to power AI. Of course, a lot of power goes to AI, but everything else in our life is really being used to consume more and more energy. And so any country right now who want to be the predominant world leader going forward needs to hold and control how much output in energy they're able to control. And this goes with like safe, reliable energy. And nuclear energy right now is one of them. Love or hate Trump, that's one of the mandates that he's put in place, is that we need to build more power plants. China's building 10 at the moment. We're building 1. That tells you the scope and scale of how we can fall behind really quickly if we don't focus on the energy supply side.
China is the largest energy producer. They are actually 2 times larger than us.
Yeah, and so that's why it's critical you focus on the energy level first. Now, when we talk about the energy level, you may ask, like, so how do we fall into that? Are we ourselves going to build like nuclear power plant? That's not the case. But when we're looking at energy, what areas can real estate investors or what areas can investor play a part? Easy one is the commercial land beneath it. Where are these being built? Is there a way for you to own fractional ownership over that? Another thing you can think about is the area surrounding that plant. There's going to be more commerce. Right now, how data centers are being built, they're not built by the cities that are going to need them. They build them by the cheapest energy source. We have friends who are in that space, and what they're doing is they're plugging into wind farms so that they're actually in rural areas, rural Texas, somewhere in North Dakota,
yes.
all these places that you probably wouldn't normally think about going, but they're putting their data center right next to it. So there's opportunity for real estate there. The people who are going to be living in that area, what is the population structure going to look like? Are there more businesses that are going to move in that supports that ecosystem? So all of that are things that you can focus on. The really awesome thing that we learned from Jonathan Gray previously with Blackstone is he always wanted to be in the picks and shovel business. He doesn't need to be in the gold mining business. He just supports that main function and find ways where he fits in. And I think that's something that we all can really reflect and learn from, because like a lot of time we think, man, I can't build a nuclear power plant, so therefore I can't participate in this wealth formation. But that's not true, because there's surrounding businesses, adjacent businesses, and codependent businesses that you can plug yourself into and get the benefit of the movement towards more renewable, more energy efficiency, more consumption power build up in the country.
And what is layer number 2?
Layer number 2 is chips, specific semiconductor chips. Right now, the United States produces around 10% of all chips manufactured in the world, with Taiwan producing about 60%. That's something that leaves us vulnerable for a couple of reasons. The first one is due to the geopolitical tension between China and Taiwan. And we don't want anything harmful to happen, but should they decide to take over, a lot of things can happen. And one of the key areas they would definitely intend to destroy would be the chip factories, because that's really now has become so embedded in our society technology that we can't really survive without them. That's part of the reshoring efforts as well, because we're so reliant on Taiwanese manufacturing. That's why President Trump has spent a lot of effort and time and money to actually persuade factories to move to the United States, or even having local factories build more factories on site. So for example, TSMC in Chandler, Arizona, they had to basically replicate what they have in Taiwan. And this isn't just about building the factory, which by itself was a really difficult feat, but they also have to bring in the entire ecosystem that supports that. And that means everything from even filtration vendors, any small parts that plays into building those chips, that those ecosystem, those parties, those small vendors all need to come into Arizona. And Jensen Huang again was joking recently because he's Taiwanese, and he said since TSMC has been in Arizona, he feels that Taiwanese food has gotten a lot better in Arizona because of all the influx of Taiwanese residents. And again, if you go back to what we talked about, you can't be a chip manufacturer, but what can you do, right? What can you participate in? For us, we saw a movement. We're building a build-to-rent community in North Texas that's not far from Texas Instruments' new plant that's been injected with federal government's grants of billions of dollars. Similarly, because we recognize that, hey, the people who are moving into this area to support the chip factory needs a place to stay. And in the case of Chandler, it's very interesting because they're literally moving from a different country. So now there's an influx of high-tech young professionals who don't have a place to stay. So if you have the ability to attract them, your homes, your built-to-rent communities, your apartment buildings, you're going to have a whole bunch more demand coming into that place.
So the lesson here is pay attention to where factories are being built, not just the factory themselves. So what is layer number 3, Palm?
Layer number 3 is infrastructure. So infrastructure includes highways, roads, and transportation improvements. So these are projects that attract people and reduces commute times. In real estate, especially multifamily real estate, commute time matters a lot. For example, we have a property in Houston that we bought and we knew ahead of time that there was going to be a free extension. That dramatically increased the property's desirability because it benefits the residents that will live on the property. Their commute time to their job site will be significantly less. So instead of living somewhere even closer, they may say, hey, I have a highway now near our property. We're going to use this one. We love the home. We love the multifamily apartment. We're going to live here and we're going to commute to our job site. So having the transportation infrastructure is critical. And it's not just even roads or highways. It's everything from how large the water treatment plant is. There's a whole bunch of component that really controls the population size. There's areas where water supply is limited and because of the way the filtration system works or the water supply from the municipality. And if you don't have those kind of things solved, you will have a constraint on the organic amount of people who can live in a specific area. So infrastructure buildup is really critically important. And you follow the money, you follow the roads, almost like you go down the yellow brick road. If they're building highways somewhere, know that there's most likely going to be more people living in that area, that pocket.
So buying ahead of these developments creates long-term upside that many investors miss. So what is layer number 4?
Layer number 4 is AI models. So think of ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, all those things. One of the things I love is you can incorporate some of that to reduce your time that you work on tedious projects. We all know about those things. One of the things I do want to emphasize is you still have to have a human being in the loop. We heard recently that Deloitte, one of the big 3 auditing firms, they did a report for one of their big clients and it turns out to have so many different errors because they solely relied on AI to do the reporting. AI is great, but AI is also really confident when it's wrong. I was recently just playing around. I uploaded one of our budgets just to see what it would say and it was hallucinating so badly because, for instance, our total revenue is about $6+ million on that property and I don't know where it got the number. It said your top line revenue is $3.3 million. That'll be a big red flag, right? So when we're reviewing stuff like this, use AI as a first draft in today's reality, but don't rely solely for the output. And I think like that is one of the key factors. So yeah, so that model, that layer would be for us. There's people who do even AI modeling, right? But for financial modeling for real estate. But one of the things I saw was I asked them like, because a lot of these reportings aren't necessarily uniform. And I asked them like, how do you solve for that? They said, well, if you see something that doesn't make sense, you click this thumbs down button. And what that does is like, it alerts someone to literally go in and look at it and add it. And so like, that's probably someone in the Philippines, like who's hired specifically to do that kind of work. But that goes again to, you have to then rely on them and their ability to read these thoroughly. So even when you're doing modeling, financial modeling right now, as it stands in 2026, I recommend that we all not rely solely on AI. We have to know these numbers, these fundamentals for ourselves and use AI as a tool to reduce the tediousness of the workflow.
So what is the layer 5 of AI cake?
So this is just what I mentioned. These are the applications. These are drawing from some of these models, chat, Perplexity, all those things, and they're just tools that you're using. Again, still don't depend solely on these tools. Use human judgments because for the time being, it can be confidently inaccurate.
Now, the third billionaire surprised me the most. What was his biggest lesson, Palm?
Yeah, so this one was really interesting. That even billionaires use other people's money. Oh my God. Shocking, I know.
Even when they don't need to.
Well, I mean, that is also, debatable because even Apple issues bonds. So there's always a reason to use other people's money, especially when they're looking to do creative financing. Creative financing isn't a weakness. A lot of times we look at creative financing and we cringe. We think like, oh, no money down. You can be poor and buy $100 million apartment. That's not the case. But creative financing goes up the food chain. Even people who have billions of dollars in transactions, they use creative financing to extract the highest value financially from the purchase. So why not billionaires? And that was one of the cool things. It's like billionaires also want other billionaire friends to what they call co-invest. They want other people to come along with them to invest alongside them. While you may think they're floating on clouds and eating unicorn marshmallows, they're also regular people who want other people to come in so that they build confidence in their investments as well. It's really the fastest way to scale your wealth while reducing risk. And while they do have large egos, it's not large enough for them to not recognize that, hey, having other people on board actually reduces their risk rather than actually increasing it. And with that said, if you meet any billionaire who want to invest in a property, Nan, tell everyone who's listening, what is one thing you should not do?
You should never say, I have a deal for you.
Yes.
Right off the bat, when you just said hello, and after hello, you just say, that's
me.
Never do that.
But even with us, when people want to partner with us, one of the things that we hear a lot, and just randomly people will be like, hey, I live in Arizona. Would you be interested in deals in Arizona? And while we want to be polite and say like, sure, but in honesty, we don't know you. You don't know us. Why would you want to commit to that kind of relationship?
That's like asking someone to marry, like when you just meet them.
Yeah. And I think like this happens a lot when people ask you, and they mean well, but they'll text Nan after they meet her for the first time. They'll say like hey,
this morning,
what can I do for you? It's like, I don't know you, so I'm not sure what you can do for me, right? So the relationship, I think, needs to be more organic. I feel like the relationships that we've had that actually has been mutually beneficial in the long term have always been with people who spent time to actually build and learn who we are, not have to put us on the spot and ask, what do we need? Because they've learned, oh, you have to serve the other person. But if we don't know who you are, we're not going to tell you to go make us a omakase dish when we don't even know if you know how to cook. So you have to build trust over time. And especially the more wealthy you get, the more careful you are with your money and the people who you surround. Like recently, I learned that there's about 6 people that is the fortress outside of any billionaire. And part of that circle would be things like a trusted attorney, CPA, tax strategist, even a construction arm, a personal assistant, a friend, a family member, one of those 6. And the key and easiest way to get into that circle, to pierce that, is to find a mutually beneficial relationship with someone on the outside of the ring. And that's not through just asking, hey, what can I do for you? This is not like the UPS commercial, what can Brown do for you, right? It's more about really spending time and building that organic relationship. We live in an age of instant gratification, and you think just because you asked us that question, we would trust that by giving you that answer, you're going to be able to solve our problem. That's not really the case.
So what I found out recently that is kind of interesting is that people like to force their opinion or their asset class on you. For example, everybody knows we're in multifamily and someone want us to do like storage. And they literally said, oh, Nan and Palm, you should be in storage because of this. Even I said, oh no, we don't want to do storage because of XYZ. They still like, oh, I don't care. This is the best thing.
Basically, they have to know the pulse of the room. Never try to convince someone else of your position. If they ask you and then you have a productive conversation, I think that's fine. But never impose what you feel on someone else, especially when they're telling you point blank that that's not the case. A couple months ago, we had a mutual friend DM us on Instagram and say, hey, I may have a deal for you. And because I respected this person, I said, okay, let me talk to you. Okay. And it turns out that they were trying to inject what they want to invest in on us. And we said like, that's not what our buy box is. That's not the product that our investor wants.
And the answer was not good enough, right?
Yeah, the answer is never good enough. And so if you want to build relationships with people who have 400 million assets under management or people who are billionaires, then you have to pay attention to these small nuances. If that's not what they want to invest in, don't force them to do it, because that's only going to repel them further from you.
So what's the common thread between all 3?
Their relentless curiosity. They study every day and they never think they've made it, and they act even imperfectly.
Which is why most people stay stuck.
Exactly. Most people watch information float by. Billionaires grab it, apply it, and build something with it.
So if you want to build wealth in this decade, stop copying what worked in the last one. Start thinking like the people who already won.